Welcome to Voices of the Valley, a captivating podcast series that brings together some of the brightest minds in the agriculture industry. Straight from the field to your living room, we explore the challenges, innovation, and triumphs in modern-day farming and provide insight for consumers who are curious about where their food comes from.
All right, so I'm Ann Donahue. I'm Director of Communications at Western Growers. I'm here with Garrett Nishimori, who is General Manager at San Miguel Produce. Hi, Garrett.
Hi, Ann. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. It's been so long. It hasn't been long. We hang out all the time. That's awesome. So we're here today to talk about farm to fork for real. Garrett, can you talk a little bit about your experience in farming and your experience as a chef?
Sure. So on the farming side, I would say it started as early as high school. You know, I had the opportunity to spend my summers here at San Miguel Produce, and the first summer, I think, was my first experience in it, and I was on the cucumber packing line at the time, sizing, grading, and specking out cucumbers. They put me at the very end because I was a little slow, but, you know, I made my way through that summer. The next summer, I got to work in our fresh cut operation, mainly folding boxes because I don't think I could keep up with all the bags coming off either, so... And then finally, my third summer, I got to work in our field mechanic shop and got to learn how to service trucks and tractors, and I fixed a lot of pallets. So, you know, all that good stuff. I guess from the culinary side, I was probably cooking since I was in middle school. My parents were both in the medical field, so they, you know, I would sometimes come home first and I would start dinner. So just starting simple, you know, grilling some meat, making some rice, making a vegetable. And then as I got into college at UC Berkeley, I got exposed to a lot more different types of food, more ethnic food, more authentic flavors, and got really excited and explored more and ate out more and gained a few pounds, which was fun. But it was a great experience for me. And then after college, I realized that I wanted to pursue a career in culinary arts. So I went to culinary school in San Francisco and then did my externship at Walt Disney World at the Canadian Pavilion at a restaurant called Le Cellier, which is a steak restaurant. And then after that, came back and worked at Aqua in San Francisco, which was a 2-star Michelin seafood California restaurant. And we used a lot of different produce. So it was a lot of fun seeing different types of produce, different fish, and different types of seafood and meats. So a lot of fun.
So I'm going to totally derail this interview right now and ask you how realistic the bear is.
I did watch that show. It was recommended to me by many friends, and I thought it was actually a lot of the drama was pretty real. You know, a lot of crazy stuff happens in the kitchen. It's very high, kind of a high stress atmosphere with, you know, not a lot of sleep and, you know, different personalities. So I think that part of it felt pretty real to me. Did
you ever get locked in the cooler, either here at San Miguel or at a restaurant?
Have I ever been locked in a cooler? Not on purpose. But yeah, you know, some of the coolers doors don't always work it very well. So I would say, yeah, it's probably happened for a little bit. Sometimes actually you'd spend your time down there. In the restaurant, we had a 2-story kitchen. So all our cold storage is downstairs. So a lot of times you would get to your station and then you'd be like, oh, I forgot something. So you'd wait till you get a couple things on your list and then you'd run down and get it. And then you get down there and you'd be staring in cold storage. You'd be like, whoa, wait, what was I here for? I don't remember what I was here for.
And San Miguel is your family farm. Can you talk about how you're related to Roy and how the operation is right now here in Oxnard?
Of course. So San Miguel Produce was founded by my uncle in 1976. He started as a commodity grower, growing items like celery, cabbage, broccoli, those types of things. And at the time, Oxnard, this region was kind of a... they had their season in between like the Salinas and the desert. And then over time, as like growers were expanding their seasons and growing more through the months, you know, he kind of saw the business shifting. So in the early 1990s, he decided to kind of shift the business and he moved it into we call it the cooking green category, but collard, kale, mustard, turnip, those types of greens. He did a phone survey in the 90s to see if people would want a fresh cut option, a value added option, and kind of the greens, you know, that were traditionally very hard to clean because, you know, oftentimes they had some dirt in them, so you had to clean them very thoroughly. So that's when he launched the first fresh cut cooking greens in a bag called Cut and Clean Greens, and that's been kind of our cornerstone brand for the past almost 30 years. And we've expanded into organics and different varieties and different blends, but kind of been the focus of the company since then. So we also expanded into kind of the Asian greens category as well. So we have a brand called Jade. And right now, just one SKU, it's the baby Shanghai bok choy. We're looking at innovating in that category as well. But yeah, just kind of expanding into something that's kind of culturally niche-y and then trying to bring it mainstream has been kind of our expertise as a company. So look for more innovation there too as well.
And how was it transitioning back from being a chef? Like how did you come back home here to work?
So in 2010, the restaurant I was working at, Aqua, closed. Basically, they had the owner had passed away, and they just didn't have a really great succession plan, which was kind of related to a lot of, I think, agriculture companies too. Just not always planning that far out. But so they ended up closing, and I wanted to come back at the time. My grandmother, who was in her 90s, I was very close with her, and wanted to come back and spend some more time with her. I had been away at college and cooking for a number of years. So those two reasons, I wanted to come back, and then thought it'd be a fun time to kind of get back into the farm to fork kind of movement and learn a little bit more about farming. So I came back. I asked my uncle if I could work at the farm for a year or two while I spent some time at home, and eventually I was planning to go back, but that was in 2010, so that was almost 15 years ago. So that's not going to happen, at least anytime soon. But when I came back, I got some really cool experience. I got to work with the field team. I got to work with their production team, sales and marketing. So my experience here has been very educational. I've learned a lot, got to see a lot. I get to travel to see a lot of operations with cool programs like the Western Growers Future Volunteer Leadership Group. So really excited, and just learning new things and seeing it from the time it gets planted to the time it ships out the doors, and yeah. So
you guys are a grower, packer, shipper, as we say in the trade. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah. So and up until 2020, we grew all of our product. So we planted, we came up with planting schedules, we planted everything, we cultivated, we grew it, we harvested it, we hauled it, cooled it, and then it gets to the facility where we cut, wash, and pack, and then eventually ship it out. So a lot of different parts of the operation, and dealing with fresh produce is challenges almost daily. So trying to navigate those the best we can.
So you mentioned that you're interested in kind of getting back to the farm to fork idea of the business. What does that mean to you as somebody who's had experience on both sides?
Yeah, so I would say what kind of, sparked that interest was really working with it in the kitchen. And, we did things that were probably not as normal, that everyone at home would cook. So, finding new ways to use different parts of the plant and different parts of the produce. One of my favorite things to eat is chard stems. And unless you're buying a bunch, you're probably not getting it. But they're really, if you just kind of braise them down, it's just super tender, sweet, delicious. But yeah, I think kind of having that culinary background really sparked that interest to learn what's kind of going on from the beginning. And I think you see that with consumers too. I think the people who cook more often are probably a little bit more open to trying new things, trying new flavors, and utilizing the whole plant or the whole animal or whatever they're cooking.
Do you think that term farm to fork, do you think there's some meaning to it, or do you think it's kind of like a buzzy marketing term that's caught on? Because everybody wants to think of themselves as being like a responsible consumer and a responsible cook and a responsible eater. And here's a terminology that fits it perfectly. Do you think people have a full understanding of what it means when they say something is farm to fork?
That's a good question. I don't know if I would say probably most consumers probably don't. And, I think for the most part, consumers are kind of disconnected to the food supply system and, how things are grown and how they're processed and the challenges that come along with that. And, maybe some of the inconsistencies in produce that they probably don't understand, but, it's part of nature. And it's, I think it's what makes it kind of unique is, especially from cooking, from raw ingredients, you have to, as you, train as a chef, you learn that you got to taste your food at every step. And, even though you have a recipe, it might not be the same recipe every time. And, I think some of that adjustments is what makes it kind of exciting and, eventually a delicious dish.
What do you wish that the average consumer knew about farming that they don't know?
That's a good one. So I have a t-shirt. It says farming, which is a noun, the art of losing money while working 400 hours a month to feed people who think you are trying to kill them.
It's so depressing, and yet, from my experience, entirely accurate.
Yeah. So when I saw that shirt, I had to buy it, of course. I don't wear it out too often. I usually just sleep in it. But, a lot of it's very true. I think, most people think that farmers are making a lot of money, but, it's a very low margin, high capital cost type of industry. And, so definitely the art of losing money is very accurate. And then, I think the big disconnect is, when people go to stores, they expect full shelves, full of beautiful produce that are perfect, and I think they don't understand the imperfections in produce and all the stuff that probably ends up left in the field and, all the food waste that's out there. And then all the work that it takes to get it there on time, it's perishable. So it's got to be often and very quick. So that part. And then the last part, trying to kill people, that's definitely not our intent. And, I think there's a lot of great progress in food safety. And it's a continual process. It's not something that the industry or any producer is ever satisfied with. It's something that, is very continuous improvement type of programs. And, farmers just don't spray to spray. Like, that stuff costs money, and, they're doing it to protect their crops, to try to get efficiencies and protect it from pests and plant diseases and anything else that's out there. So,
yeah. So when you talk about imperfections in produce, can you be specific about what you mean about that? Like, if people go to a grocery store and they find fault, does that mean it's less nutritious? Does that mean it's rotten? Does that mean it should be thrown away? Does that mean you have to yell at the retailer for carrying something that doesn't look photo model perfect?
Yeah, so I would say, as far as defects in the produce, the main one that I think people should avoid is decay. Right? If the produce is going bad, you probably shouldn't eat it. But, there's other things like, for example, kale for us, a lot of times in the summer months when it grows faster, it has a lighter green color, and that's seen as a defect. And, maybe naturally it has some variance in the nutritiousness, but it's still a really good, product for you to consume. So I would say that, color, maybe has a hole from a insect that ate a little bit of it, stuff like that, just like wind damage, you might get some scarring from wind. But yeah, I would say that those imperfections, definitely consumable. It just doesn't look the prettiest.
So when you were a chef at a 2-star Michelin restaurant and you saw imperfections like that, would that immediately put it in the compost pile, or would you find a way to make it work? Yeah, so you would find a way. And, food cost in a professional kitchen is very important. So as opposed to like maybe a home cook, like if you get an onion and you only use half, you only use half. But, in the kitchen, you're trying to get every layer of that onion used. So if someone's peeling too many layers away, you're trying to tell them, don't peel that last layer. But yeah, yields are very important and food costs are very important. So I would say that in the kitchen, I think definitely using things that are maybe not perfect, you're still going to try to find a way to use it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what are some misconceptions people have about being a chef?
About being a chef. So I would say that I think most people think you need to have a formal training to be a chef. And I don't think that's true at all. I think, a lot of it is learned by experience. And so, I would encourage anyone that wants to learn to cook, start cooking, try it, taste your food, make changes. There's probably some YouTube videos that will help too. But, a recipe is a base. And I feel like I've kind of mentioned before, there's a lot of raw ingredients or produce. They don't always taste the same. An orange is sometimes sweeter in certain seasons, or, the kale could be more bitter in certain seasons or more sweet in certain seasons. So learning how to adjust and taste is very important in cooking.
So coming from a farming background, what knowledge from that did you employ in the kitchen?
I think that kind of just helped me, I guess, identify some ingredients that I wanted to try to cook. So I remember the first time in college, we had gone to Everett & Jones in Oakland, which is a barbecue spot, and they had collards on the menu. So I tried them. They're delicious. And so I remembered my uncle was growing and packing and shipping collards. So I was like, ooh, I'm going to try to cook them. So my first experience cooking collard greens was in my college apartment kitchen in a pot that was too small. I wasn't formally trained. I tried to follow the recipe, but I must have cooked that thing for hours and it was still not cooked and it didn't come out great. But I didn't give up. So I would say now my collard greens are much better. People actually like to eat them, so that's good. But yeah, I think, over time learning not to put too much in the pot at the same time and tasting your food, and stuff like that. So,
and it seems like on both sides of your career, you've really had kind of a purposeful concern about food waste and avoiding it. Can you talk a little bit about that and what consumers can do to also avoid food waste?
Yeah, so I think for me is I just kind of had a lot of unique experience in both and kind of seeing how much work goes into both, growing and shipping your food and then in the restaurant preparing your food, how much labor and love goes into that. So, I just don't like to see it go to waste. It's just not a great thing. So I think that's where my food waste story comes in. And then I think for consumers, one of the things that I saw when I was in the Bay Area shopping at Berkeley Bowl, they sold a lot of number 2 mushrooms, which were imperfect, but they still tasted great. And I think that was probably on the consumer side, one of the first things that I've saw that you can buy at a discount, but something that probably got thrown away. And I think, more of that can happen. I think there's some people trying to get that accomplished. It's just tough because I think, most consumers want, the perfect produce.
So what can consumers do if they're concerned about where their food is sourced or where it comes from, or they're interested in kind of following the food truly from farm to fork along the supply chain? How can they find out more information about that?
That's a good question. I think it's a very complicated one because I think our food system is very complicated and dynamic and changing. So, I think the best thing is to start asking questions. If you buy a product, ask the company who packed it and ask them where it came from. Build a relationship with the farmers. So if you're lucky enough to know a farmer, ask them. They'll tell you. But I think there's some technology stuff that's being started and QR codes that can kind of trace back. And I think eventually it'll probably be there. I think there's a big push for that. So I think, in the future, maybe you can just scan the bag and it'll tell you exactly where it came from. I know some companies are probably doing it, but for the majority of companies, I don't think that's quite commonplace yet, but I think it'll probably end up getting there.
Thank you so much, Garrett.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Voices of the Valley, a Western Growers production, produced by Corey Lundy, Ann Donahue, Michelle Rivera, Kara Timmons, and Julia Nellis. As always, we'd like to give a special shout out to our guest for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe to catch our future episodes, and we invite you to follow us on social media to continue the conversation.